Glad that you're still with us right here on the Morning Express, and now we're on the lifestyle section. And today, just as I told you earlier, we'll be looking at cohabiting, what in Kenya we commonly know as come we stay, and like I heard from somebody recently, it's now known as come we risk. Is it really a risk? That's what we'd like to talk about. I'd just like to let you know the phone lines are already open in case you'd like to share your experience. Maybe you are cohabiting and you have some challenges that you're going through. We do have Chris Hart, who's a relationship expert with us. We'll also have Ken joining us shortly, who's a sociologist, and we'll be looking at cohabiting, the pros and cons. Maybe you were cohabiting before and you have a lesson that you learned and you'd like the rest to learn from that. Would love to hear from you. You can also tweet, and that's on at Michael G. Gitonga if you're going to use Twitter, or you can also SMS on 22155. We'll be glad to hear from you. And joining me now is Chris Hart. Welcome. Always a pleasure to have you as a relationship expert. We also have Ken, who's a sociologist. Welcome, yes, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And let me start with you, Ken. Cohabiting. The last few weeks we've been talking about divorce, and according to what Chris Hart has told us, it's something that with the busy lifestyles we live, it just seems to be a revolution that we're going through. Is cohabiting now becoming the next form of showing commitment? Because with marriage, you'd previously have to go through certain, I'd call it a rigorous exercise that shows commitment. You'd have to pay, meet the parents, pay bride price, maybe arrange a ceremony of sorts, whether it is a wedding or just going to the AG. But now we are looking at a situation where we have more couples coming together with no announcement or anything. It is public knowledge that they're living together, but no form of commitment or public announcement that I am committed to you. What is going on there?
I guess it's a test run for marriage, and a lot of people who are serious with each other do not mind sharing the domicile, the residence, and when they do that, they're already showing commitment to each other. Usually, the lady moves in the African setting, and when she does, she's already feeling accepted by the man. Yeah, that would be in the nominal circumstance, but in the urban setting, mostly cohabitate arrangements are for convenience. In fact, there are guys who do it for economic ease, that they are together and they share the bills and everything goes along, and the ladies with their fierce independence today that Chris likes talking about, will come and say, okay, fine, I'll meet half the bills, you meet the other half, but we are in love, which is not a bad thing. If it could go on like that for the rest of life, fine. The only thing is that they do it out of, tentative fear of a final commitment, because once you do parental visitation, once you do the ceremonies, then you're stuck. Yeah. The beauty with cohabitate arrangement is that you can always opt out. Yeah. So it's almost like a contract.
It's almost like an unagreed contract, but not written, an unwritten contract.
Yeah.
Chris, what do you think is happening? We had Bishop Alan Kuna. And one of the things he said yesterday, he was saying that if a man, at the point you begin to relate, has not declared he wants to marry you, chances are he's not going to marry you. He probably doesn't see you as wife material. Could that be the scenario here?
No, I don't think so. I think actually people cohabit, broadly speaking, in two groups. There are some for whom it is a stage on the way to marriage. They're actually thinking about the whole process. At some point they know they're going to be married. But it happens to be convenient to start cohabiting beforehand. But there are others for whom cohabiting is either an accident, like somebody's lease is up, so they quickly move in with the other.
Temporary accommodation.
Temporary accommodation, yeah. Or, and this is more serious, it's a case where they're not actually committed, and they are cohabiting in order to avoid the commitment. You see what I mean? So, although they're living together, it's a much more fragile relationship, and there's no real intent on at least one of the parties, to become a fully committed relationship. So, if you lump the two together, first of all, you're missing that subtlety, but even when you do lump them together, if you look at the statistics, you see that cohabiting couples are less stable, they're much less likely to be together 2, 4, 10 years later. They are more at risk. I think you used that word. The law is not defined for cohabiting couples. So unless a cohabiting couple goes to a lot of trouble to define the relationship legally, who owns what, then when they split up, somebody's going to lose out. So it's quite a chancy business.
Okay.
There are lots of reasons why it's happening, though. There really are. I mean, people are getting impatient with state control of marriage. They don't like the process of governments saying, you will do this, you will do that. They don't like the process of divorce. They do recognize, most couples now, that there is a substantial chance that a relationship will end in divorce. They don't want to go through that process. It's an awful process. It's way out of touch with how people live their lives now.
But isn't the process of divorce, in terms of emotional, what you go through emotionally, the same as cohabiting and having to separate, depending on how long, of course, you've cohabited?
Emotionally, yes, but legally, no. See, the process of going for a divorce, particularly in this country, for example, it is an adversarial process. You have to accuse somebody and blame them.
Right.
Now, that's not nice. And then there's a big argument about, splitting up the assets and all the rest of it. Very unpleasant process, can take many, many years. And people are aware of that, and they don't feel comfortable with it. So around the world, not just this country, around the world, cohabitation rates are increasing dramatically. In quite a number of westernized countries now, more than 50% of all couples are cohabiting instead of marrying. Now, that is not
a huge percentage.
It's a huge percentage.
Ken, what does this say about our moral fabric, and has our society changed to that degree? Because at some point, marriage was viewed as almost an announcement, and it was a way of saying, I am not hiding this from anybody. In fact, if you look at the Christian faith, cohabiting was called living in sin, or is called living in sin. But now it is changing to a point where we even have more Christians and across the board who are okay with cohabiting, to a point where even parents are accepting it. There's a time I think you'd have had to hide from your parents. It would not be an easy sell to tell your dad that, oh, I'm living with my boyfriend. But now it's becoming something acceptable. Has our moral fiber gone down, and what has caused this?
Well, globally, the moral space has been expanded. Now, that's the problem with morality, because the definition of morality is almost becoming subjective.
And who defines what morality is? Yes, that's the
thing. It's like my dress, my choice. I decide what I'm doing. And so, therefore, the beauty with cohabitation, just to pick up on what Chris was saying, is it's a social contract. It's very easy to handle. And if anything were to happen, you fight with yourselves, the two of you, and you say, I bought this chair, but I added you the money for the cushion. So you keep the cushions. And you don't have to go through that whole rigorous process. And the worst thing about it is that if you were to dissolve any other union that's not cohabitate, like in Kenya, first they tell you, go and try again. First you accuse someone, like he says, but then you're still told, give it another 6 months or so, see if it can work. And that time you can imagine the nightmare you have to go through. Somebody you've already accused, and then you have to go back and say, okay, let's see if this can work. But the thing with cohabitation is, there are different levels of intimacy that people look for in marriage. And when you come together, one of the most important ones for society is social intimacy, where people have to be able to visit you and legitimize your union. So you don't have to have paid dowry, or you don't have to have taken bride work. But as long as the parents can come home, as long as the relatives can come home, then you're almost legitimate. The only problem with cohabitants is that they never allow this. Yeah, like you're saying, sometimes they're seeking legitimacy, but for themselves. Their friends can come over and visit. But the minute you tell your dad, he says, I'm coming there as who? Because traditionally...
He'll not even accept to come.
Yeah, I will only come over as a father-in-law.
Okay.
I can't come to visit the two of you.
We're just living in a house which you've not declared. All right, Ken in Nairobi. Good morning, Ken. Over to your comment.
Yeah, I wanted to contribute actually on the debate today.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and then I wanted to suggest that now we are experiencing a paradigm shift from what used to be in the tradition, like the traditional ways of people getting into marriage, and now things are moving to the 21st century. It cannot be like it used to be in the 90s or the 70s. Yeah, I think we're experiencing a change, and we better accept it and live with it the best way.
Okay, thank you very much, Ken. We also have Susan. Susan, good morning.
morning.
Yes, good morning, Susan. Your comments?
Okay, I wanted to...
Hello?
I've been married for... I will not call it marriage. I've been staying with this man for 8 years now.
8 years?
Yes, but in 2010, I have not done anything formal.
Okay, Susan, I can't hear you. You need to be stable on the phone.
Okay, I'm saying we have been staying together for 8 years.
Cohabiting?
Yeah.
Okay.
In 2010, I found this marriage certificate on his bag. He got married to another lady at the registrar.
Okay.
So, the question that I have, am I the second wife? I don't know, but I came in first.
Okay. All right. Not very clear there, but I think I got the gist of the question. She's been cohabiting with this guy for 8 years, and she found a marriage certificate. So is she a second wife? I guess this would be a legal thing, but socially, is she looked at as a second wife?
That's the danger with cohabitation. The only thing I know, like in the Kenyan constitution presently, once you are together for a while and there's evidence, and you know the thing with the new constitution is that evidence is so flimsy, it could be as little as the neighbors proving that you've been living together. Right. Once they say, oh, these guys have been here for the last 1 year or two, then the constitution gives you that space to qualify as a spouse. Now all you need to do is formalize. So this lady would then consider herself already taken as a wife. But the problem with that is that if the guy has legitimized another one legally, then it means now she has to deal with fighting for her space legally, because then there would be the issue of bigamy or polygamy, so to speak, and then she would have to find how to remain wife, quote unquote, without being legally recognized thus.
Right. Yeah. Chris, how does one get to this? Because we hear these cases over and over again. Here you are cohabiting with your husband or your wife, yet they're married elsewhere. How does that happen? Yes. I mean, isn't there telltale signs that would...
Well, such situations are increasingly common. And one of the reasons, of course, is that the legal process is so complex. It's very common for couples to split up but not divorce. So you end up with a man or a woman who starts another relationship and yet he's actually married to somebody else. Somebody he may not have spoken to for years, but he hasn't actually gone through the legal process. And I'm afraid that's quite common. And in some cases, of course, it's completely open. The new couple says to one another, this is the situation. I am married to someone else. I've not spoken to them for years and I don't intend to. But this is the situation. Lots of people go into that arrangement. And maybe a few years later, it is finally tidied up. Maybe it isn't.
Maybe it isn't.
But that's what happens.
Ken, what are some of the risks that one stands with cohabiting from a social perspective? Because with marriage, just like we'd said earlier, there are certain things you've made it public. You've even, as it were, paid for it, for want of a better word, because really you're not paying. It's not a goat or whatever, but there's the process that you've gone through to show your commitment. What risks are there socially when it comes to now cohabiting?
The age-old problems, the ones which have always been there, include stigma, ridicule, you know, those kind of things that people tell you you've been taken for free. Now that you're talking about quote-unquote paying. And the fact that the person hasn't seen it fit or deemed it, you know, wise enough to bring a goat or a cow over to your place, or to come and at least provide what we call marital currency to your parents and to your community, means either it's with your complicit agreement, or the person does not value you that much. So he keeps telling you, we'll do it, but meanwhile you're already together. So the more you stay in that, you have that issue of having to, you know, stand accused by society. You didn't take this seriously, you didn't fight for your space, you didn't make the man do what he was meant to have done.
But you know, there's another side to that. If you look at the way the law is formulated in terms of marriage, it's clearly property. In effect, the couple own one another, and it's usually highly biased. It's the man owns the woman. A lot of women don't like that. A lot of women say, hey, I've fought my way through life, I'm independent, I have my own money. Do I really want to put all that into a pot where now I'm effectively... I'm owned. So, yes, he's right. there is a residue of stigma amongst the older generation. But when you look at the younger generation, they don't see that stigma. In fact, they see the reverse. They say, I want my independence. I want to form a relationship where the relationship is defined by our feelings for one another and not in terms of property. There is another aspect to this, though. When couples marry, you're dead right. It is costly. And of course, that is a barrier to leaving the relationship. The fact that you have entertained a lot of people and they've all watched you take your vows and so on has a tendency to stabilize the relationship. It's much easier to leave a cohabiting relationship than a marital relationship. So there is an argument for saying that somehow there needs to be that cost in the relationship, even if you're not doing something legal. There needs to be some sort of demonstration to everybody that you are serious in your commitment to one another.
Okay. Ken, do you think that this is a show, especially now that from what Chris says, that sometimes there needs to be that cost? Is our society becoming more irresponsible or less geared towards committing to something, anything? Because even in the job market, if you think about it, it is not like before somebody can walk out and not just come back. So are we becoming as a society less towards commitment?
You know, the minute the church has allowed these weird arrangements to be admitted in church, then something changed in the fabric of society. And when you can go to church as two men and say, we want to formalize, and the church says, okay, welcome, at the risk of being sued, you know, and then they agree to formalize that vow and say, okay, these two guys are getting wedded and we as a church are presiding over it, then, you know, the rest of society then stands back and says, if religion can be this permissive, what is about the law? Why don't we expand the space?
So do you think religion is responsible for this?
Right now, religion has expanded that space a little too much. You know, because when you go to church, lesbians can get married, gays can get married, and they're permitted to do so in church. The church still has its, you know, basic rules against certain forms of what they call marital deviance, things which you are not expected to do. But that's when now the law takes over and then permits these what I call quasi-marital arrangements to proceed and say, okay, as long as we recognize each other's limits and space, then we are good. But you see, the traditional thing is that when you finally agree to put together masculinity and then feminine independence, which is what Chris keeps hammering in, and it's a very true thing today, that women would not like to feel commoditized, you know, and they say, okay, we're coming into this. Some of them even help you pay for the bride wealth. You know, they say, okay, you're going to our place? Fine. What do you want to carry? 300,000. I'm giving you 150. The two of you know that.
Yes.
But the family doesn't know that. So one day when you try to tell her nyef, you know, she says, hey, I even helped you pay.
I paid for myself.
Yeah. So it was just a token of
appreciation. It's a 50-50 arrangement. Yes. All right. Okay, we have Emma from Kadongo. Good morning, Emma.
Hello.
Yes, Emma. Your contribution, your question or comment?
Yeah, I wanted to ask. I've been married for something like 6 years, and happily living with my husband. There's no problem at all.
Okay.
And there was this lady. He used to live while in campus, and after leaving campus, and they had a kid. And this lady has been saying that something like they were married. So when she walked out, you see, I came in. And my husband has done everything, taken dowry, and he doesn't need this other girl. So the question I'm asking, am I the first wife now? When she comes back, she will be the second wife, or...
The dowry is paid for you, not for her?
Yeah, for me, not for her.
All right. Thank you, Emma.
Yeah.
Wow. I guess this would be a legal question, but maybe you can tackle it, Ken, and just help us out here. Do we view her as the first wife or the second wife? They've been married for 6 years, but he has a baby with another woman who...
If he was not married to the other woman, then yeah. But if she says that was also a marriage, then she would be the second wife, you know, until the law does them part. Yeah, but if he, depending on how well he formalized it, if he just used to live with her, like during campus, I see that a lot, Yeah, and they can do that in the school rooms, and then unfortunately or fortunately they have a baby. Now that baby tends to tie them together, not just legally, but in terms of emotion, in terms of feeling, and the rest of it. But if the man then makes a decision and says, no, I choose to live with you, then she is the wife, and those 6 years the other woman has not come to stake her claim and say, no, I need to do this and this is not right. Then she doesn't have a problem to worry about. But the thing is that if because of the child, either the guy feels like he needs to revitalize the other side, or the lady comes and says, no, I have a baby with you and there's nothing I'm doing with this child, so let's make up our minds, then now you have a social problem. Of course, legally it will be there, because if this lady has been married and the guy has taken things to her place, then customary law, so to speak, has already formalized her as a wife, so she's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but if the first one then were to come back and say, oh, he also brought something to our place and we already have a baby, then it would be a dual marriage thing now.
Okay. Chris, what would you advise Emma, because, from a relationship point of view, because if they've been married for 6 years and this child was conceived before they were together, but now is coming back to the scene, what does that mean? Could there be a relationship reforming with the previous?
Well, I think the most important thing is that the couple, Emma and her husband, should just sit and quietly talk through everything that has happened and agree between them what is happening and what is going to happen in the future. That's the most important thing they must do. It's clearly uncertain, but so long as the couple sit and talk truthfully about what happened and what they want to happen in the future, from a relationship point of view, they'll be fine.
They'll walk through it.
Yeah.
They can walk through it. All right, Ken, I was talking to some ladies yesterday and they were vehemently saying that for them, they cannot cohabit. And reason being, there needs to be a sign, a show of commitment. Yet there are those who easily accept it. Do you think it is a sign of possibly desperation, when somebody, particularly the lady, because mostly it's the ladies who move in, not always, but sometimes it's the ladies who move in, when they actually accept to cohabit without any public declaration or sign of commitment?
There are something maybe we should have done at the beginning. There are different types of cohabitation. There's a transition one where the lady is in it, the man is in it, but they're sure it's really not leading to the final chapter. So they're doing their thing, they're happy together, but they're not going to say, oh, after 5 years now we need to formalize. Unless, of course, they realize the emotion and the affection has taken them over. So they decide to do that. But then there's premarital cohabitants, where people agree that, let's do this for a year or two, and I move into your place, and it's already certain you're going to marry me, so we're okay. Now, the worst one is the one for convenience, cohabitate convenience, where you just come together, and sometimes it's by mistake. He alluded to that earlier, that sometimes, it just builds up. The lady comes, and today she has left a pair of shoes, tomorrow it's a jacket.
Before you know it, she's all in.
Yeah, she's in. And so you start off from Friday to Sunday, you're together, and then it moves to the whole week. So you realize you're actually living together without planning it. Most cohabitates, the problem with them is they never really sit and talk about it, which is what the psychologists will always tell you, discuss it. But most of us don't. You just decide, oh, this happened, so we are together.
In fact, that's a very interesting point he's making. You can almost divide cohabitees into the two groups, those who discuss it and those who don't.
Yes.
Those who sit and say, this is what we are doing and this is why we are doing it, and they are clear in both their minds what's happening,
they succeed.
They are much more successful than the ones who get there by accident. There's no doubt about that.
So it is necessary to discuss.
Oh, utterly. I say that endlessly. At every point in a relationship, a couple should say, what are we doing? I mean, in this day and age, when a couple meet in a bar and agree to go out, they should even say, is this a date? Because it's not always obvious anymore.
Define it.
You're just hanging out, was that a date? No, I wasn't in a date. At least be clear what you're doing at every stage, and that includes especially cohabiting.
So I guess it's very important not to assume. I
tell my students, especially the first and second years when I meet them, I always tell them, especially the girls, when a man walks up to you, precisely what he's talking about, ask them that question which men cannot really answer. Ask the guy, what do you want? Because most men will never answer that question.
Is it because they don't know?
No, sometimes they do, but they can't tell you. He knows what he wants.
It's tricky. You walk up to a girl and you just start a conversation. That's fine. But if you say, can I have a date? Then she might refuse you, in which case it's very embarrassing. So just chatting.
No, but surely if you walk up to a girl, really, sometimes you just like the way she looks and you'd like to, you know,
to
discover and just have a, not even discover, maybe just have a sit down and, you know, find out who she is, and
that's
from there
and
it's
there's nothing wrong with that. But the moment you move from just chatting over a cup of coffee to doing something, you need to know what you're doing.
And initial encounters are very nice, you know. But you know, this thing Chris keeps talking about, that the fact that you need to agree from then on. Because the first time you'll say, okay, we bumped into each other at the club, it was so much fun. You exchange numbers, and then the next time you say, can we do this again? Then now from there you start saying, fine, we are going on a date, and do you have a boyfriend? Do you have a girlfriend? What's your status? Who are you?
You need to start talking about things like, are we actually an item? Are we a couple? Am I going to be cross if I see you with somebody else? If you don't have conversations like that, then it's a free-for-all. And nobody...
And anything can happen.
You like each other.
Anything will happen.
Anything will happen. Not even can happen. All right, we have Mark in Roy Sambo. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. How are you, gentlemen?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for calling.
Okay, I have this question. Okay, like let me use my example. Like we started with we have this friendship with a lady.
With a lady?
Yeah, with a lady. It's not that you are like couple, like boyfriend and girlfriend. We are like just friends. And we started relationship. We are very close, so we started to say, let us keep the bills, stay together with the bills. Huh?
Okay.
So when we move together, that's when the relationship started.
That's when what started?
That's when the relationship started.
Okay.
When we move together, is it wrong because we are young and we don't want to get settled right now, so we want to stay together until maybe we see we can start something together?
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Is there a problem?
Is there a problem? All right. Interesting scenario there. Mark says that he has a friend who is a lady, and they decide to just split bills initially. But after splitting the bills, I guess living together, they now form a relationship.
Yeah.
And he's asking, is that a problem?
No.
It seems like it has started with the reverse.
You know, these days, anything goes. You find couples who they're not couples. You find men and women sharing a flat. They are not boyfriend and girlfriend. Of course, if you live in the same house as a man and a woman start living together, sooner or later there's going to be a relationship. Right. So he's on that slope, I would guess. If they have agreed to live together and split the bills and all the rest of it, they are forming a relationship, whether they like it or not. The interesting thing about relationships that are undefined like that is that people start to build up expectations. And then when you start talking about them, these expectations come into play. And one of the classic examples of that is a couple that's been cohabiting for years, and then for whatever reason they decide to marry. Then all of a sudden the expectations change. People expect each other to behave differently because of that piece of paper. And all of a sudden the relationship can be destabilized by that. So again, goes back to the original idea. Talk about what you're doing and why you're doing it and what you're expecting at every stage, and you're probably going to be very successful. But if you just blunder through the whole thing, almost by accident, you're going to have a few surprises.
Yeah. Ken, how important is expectations? Because that's interesting, because that's not even just for cohabiting, but even in marriage. Sometimes you've been going out with somebody for a long time, but you expect at the point he says, I do, from that night, suddenly everything changes, but you've not discussed the expectations.
Actually, most times, you know, what happens with couples is they do this together, but then right from the division of labor within the house where they are staying, there's already a clear indicator of where they're going. Because if the lady then takes up all the domesticated roles of a wife, but she's not a wife per se, she's already saying, I can do this. Yeah, then the guy gets used to the idea that, you know, I can come and throw my socks there and she'll take care of it, even though they're sharing bills and doing everything. But then she needs, you know, women are generally neat and orderly. The men, vice versa, the opposite of that. So the lady will then take up that role. And slowly the guy probably appreciates that, which he didn't see when they were starting off doing their thing. The thing with cohabitation is, as bad as it may sound, it has its advantages that, you know, you learn to navigate through living together, and you need to start unraveling each other, and you get to understand this is his limit, this is her limit. There are things I can't say, there are things I can't do. Then once you do that, sometimes it works for you that when you finally decide to marry, your expectations will be like, okay, fine, now you're my wife, first we need to have a baby, number two, we need to do this. That's when she starts saying, no, I'm still going to school, so you have to wait for 3 years. Then you start fighting. You know?
Yes, and Chris, I'll ask you later on why is it that it's men that have to make the decision. But we have Dorothy in Mathare. Good morning, Dorothy.
Good morning to you. How are you?
Very well, thank you.
Okay, my question is, I have never taken my boyfriend home.
Okay.
Simply because I do not have that so-called family, quote unquote. Yeah, my parents. Okay, I had a single parent, and she died a long time ago. The rest of the family don't care about my brother. So, how do I keep myself from being taken for granted by men? Because now look, I don't have anywhere to take my, for example, if I want to get married, I don't have anyone to take home to, you know. So what do I do about that?
All right, thank you, Dorothy.
Taken for granted.
Yes, she says she doesn't have a family per se. Her brothers don't really care about her, and her parents died. So how does she stop men from taking advantage of her by, I guess, making a commitment to somebody apart from her? I think it's accountability here.
You know, what it all boils down to is that she must stand absolutely firmly on her own 2 feet. She must be independent. When she's independent, she can decide what the rules are in a relationship, and she can stand up for them. If she's dependent, then she's going to have to put up with whatever the guy is offering.
Can she be the sole accountability person? Because you see, when you go to parents, you're declaring to them that, look,
yes,
I'm taking your daughter, and you're being accountable.
Yeah, but you see, if I am financially insecure, and along comes a man over the horizon, and he offers me security, I have to do it on his terms. If I am secure, and I'm secure psychologically as well, and I can stand up and say, I'm perfectly prepared to be on my own, but if you want to be part of my life, these are the rules, then you can decide what the rules are, and not be taken for granted. But it all comes down to being independent.
Okay.
Now, if she's not independent, then she will never be able to do that. So that's her primary goal, is to become independent. Have financial stability, be psychologically secure, comfortable with being on her own if that's what it is. But then she can choose what happens in relationships.
All right, Ken, is it a man's one?
I guess what happens is that, you know, even if she were then to secure herself, in the African setting, the beauty with us is that there's always some form of family somewhere. And so she would then, I mean, I've done it, I think twice in my life, stood up for a distant cousin. And these guys come to my house because both parents died and they have nobody. She didn't have anybody to take them to, so to speak. So then you're told, okay, you're my cousin, can you do this for me? And so you sit there and you receive them. So that would be, if it were to go to the end of the earth, that would be an option. But like Chris says, if she's okay and she's defined her, you know,
space,
domain, yes, then, you know, all she needs to do is tell the guy, let's do this, let's legalize, yeah? Because the first thing is, if you don't want to go to a wedding and do all these things, you can go to the ages chambers and just have it sorted.
Well, gentlemen, I think we're out of time, and I need to bring in Sophia here so that she can give us some of the comments that have been coming through out the show. And Sophia, karibu. Yes, still trying to adjust 1 or 2 things there and get the cameras. And yeah, Sophia, I think, is now ready to talk to us. Sophia, umekuwa wapi?
Interesting conversation you've been having there on cohabiting, and I think director had a question about why it is men appear to always hold the cards on that conversation. Seldom is it a conversation that, you know, the final word is the woman who has the say. Most of the times will be the one saying, so where is this going? Or when are we going to visit the folks to formalize it a little bit more? But a great conversation, and I hope you enjoyed it this morning. Thank you for all of your feedback and even thoughts earlier. on the conversation that we were having. Quite a number of your thoughts also. I remember many of you sending your text in as far as that clip we're talking about that's now been doing the rounds. There's also actually a hashtag that was trending, activists of doom. Yes, that clip showing that some activists could have redirected or gotten that tear gas to the peoples over that Langata land grab incident. So quite a number of your thoughts there. Brian Buga was saying, why else would they pick up a tear gas canister in an empty can and throw it in the middle of the school? And you were adding that all the videos that police gassed kids come from that one tear gas. All the outrage came from the same tear gas. And many more of your thoughts. I want to now bring in Mike, who's joining me on set. Why are you looking very serious at the camera?
I was trying to identify which camera are we on. Are we on 1, 2, 3? We're on this one, camera 3. Okay. To Kopale. Yes, very interesting there on cohabiting. And it's something that, of course, we shall continue to debate, especially given that it seems like society is changing. And that change is something that we cannot resist because of the lifestyle. It's becoming more acceptable, even on the religious circles. Remember, I think it was last week on Friday, we had a few couples, Christian couples, who are actually cohabiting and even announcing their baby is coming.
Oh.
On Hot Topics. So yeah, it is becoming
good for everyone cohabiting. I hope you have a happy Valentine's Day. And anyway, I think to each their own, yeah, whatever works for you, you do it. Have fun, honey.
Yeah, it's difficult to, I mean, you can't, who's the moral decider of what is right and wrong?
Yeah.
So it's one of those that you just leave it to every person to.
Although my mom would say, yay! How?
Never ever.
Never ever.
So that's not happening soon?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not in my case.
Oh, not at all.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's either it's the real deal or it's not.
What I don't get is, because like the conversation I had yesterday, I was just resisting to say it, but it was with two ladies who said they would never ever cohabit. So who are these who are agreeing to cohabit?
I mean, and there are many people who do, and it happens in different situations and circumstances. And the director. No, it happens. Like, actually, it's for many people. I know very many people who do it. For me, I think it's just in my head. No, it's either we are married or we're not. I'm very happy to live alone.
What's the reason behind not?
Why do I want to stay with a man who I'm not married to? What are we doing together?
But why? Is it because he's not responsible? Is it because
no, it's because if you're not
religious...
getting married, what are we doing?
You're staying together. When you get married, all you do is sign the certificate and announce hello.
I'm those old school, but I'm very old school, very traditional, very, conservative in my thinking. So let's not even go into that to expose me to people who might be thinking, what? But yeah, that's just me.
All right. Well, like we said, there's no moral whatever who decides. So yeah, you're entitled to your own opinion, and it is acceptable. I'm sure your mom is very proud of you right now.
Yes,
anyway.
Mommy.
We need to say goodbye and tell everybody kwaheri. It's been a pleasure hosting you right here on the Morning Express. My name is Michael Gitonga. Do have a good day.
I'm Sophia Wanuna. We'll see you tomorrow on State of the Nation. It will be a big one. We're having a special conversation and debate, or rather eye on Homa Bay. The by-election takes place tomorrow, so we'll have full coverage on that. And don't forget, it's also our Fitness Thursday, so later on we are sweating it out in studio. Yes.
Get your gear ready. Last week we did tell you what you need to have to be ready, so get yourselves ready. Tomorrow we're getting physical.
Fitness.
Yeah.
Bye.